Okay, do-it-yourselfers. This is my 97 Ford truck with, what does that say, 265,000 miles and change. It's diesel, and yeah, it's an old classic and it needs a lot of tuning, but it's a good workhorse. Anyway, today the gas gauge, I'm working on it, and you can see it's just pinned all the way over to full, and that's because I took the gas sending unit out of the tank, and I'll show you that in a minute. But this whole problem started with the fuel. The front tank would register completely empty, but the back tank was just fine. So when the key was off on the front tank, the needle would be up just a little bit, like in resting position, but then when I would turn on the ignition, and then the needle would even dive farther down. So this is the gas unit in the tank, the center tank, and I'll show you that in a minute. Um, this is where the fuel comes out and the vent tube back, I imagine. I think that's the way it goes. And my plastic is in good condition. Sometimes these are all messed up, and if this ends up cracking apart, then your tank cannot draw to empty. It can only draw down to about a quarter tank of gas, and then you'll be sucking up air into your diesel, and that's no good. I imagine this is the same unit for a gas truck as well as a diesel. I'm pretty sure about that. This is a 97 Ford truck, 250 diesel, 7.3. Looks brand new. I'll show you that. So, well, there we go. I'm proud of it. I keep it in good shape, and I, it's paid for, and that's the best part. So anyway, like I said, the on the dashboard it was registering completely empty. So I was thinking this was either full of diesel and just resting at the bottom. It's made out of copper, or the sending unit inside here. It's a resistor, I imagine. That's what it's a resistor, I think. So there's an ohms test, and I'll show you that. So the ohms test, right now the valve, that's completely empty, completely full. So let's start with completely empty. With the completely empty, the ohms test is showing, what is this, 4.6, you know. But then as I gradually run it up, it's working, the numbers are smooth, it's not like skipping or missing numbers because the connection is partial. It's really smooth, running right on up, and there, full tank of gas, it should be reading like 167 of 167, 167.9, 768. Okay, so obviously the connection's nice and smooth inside here. This is not full of gas, and I just tested it a minute ago. It does float. Um, I'm using alligator clips here on the housing of the unit, the ground, and then this line, this yellow line, comes up and it feeds up into here with this yellow wire here. Well, your truck may be different, but anyway, and the alligator clip is grabbing onto that. So when I tested this, before I tore into the tank, I was just reading completely empty. It was reading just nothing, completely empty. So that's why I tore into it. And let me show you that. All right, so there's the firewall and the cab of the truck. This is the bed of the truck, and I decided to cut an access point just because now I see this is the bed rail, so this will come down and rest on the bed rail. I'll run a screw in there, and I might even put some sealer around there so, rainwater or mist doesn't come up inside the bed of the truck. Or I don't know. I'm not too worried about that part. The main thing is that I can easily access my tank now, and that's why I decided to do this instead of dropping the tank or even doing a bed tilt. I considered both of those, and I just prefer to do this. Just a side note on this, I used a die grinder to go around, and it shoots sparks everywhere, and as you all know, sparks and gasoline, or even diesel, don't get along. Diesel's a lot less flammable than gasoline, so I blasted all underneath the truck with a high pressure hose to get any kind of oil residue out. And then I put in a big, like one of those sun shields for the car. And I put that inside there. It was one of those aluminum ones, like aluminum tin foil or whatever. But I covered the tank with that so the sparks would not be hitting the tank. Obviously, sparks in a gas tank don't get along. I don't recommend that, so that's up to you. You got to be smart enough to figure out what you can and can't do. I'll show you here. I just covered that so dust doesn't. It's a little windy today, and I don't want leaves blowing in here. The tank, I looked around inside the tank. It's got some diesel in there. And it's funny. I just filled up, and that's when I realized the tank's not working. So, I have, 20 gallons of diesel here, and the back tank is full as well. So what do? So I was able to siphon 5 gallons out into a tank that I had, a gas can, 5-gallon gas can that I had here. That at least brought the gas down a little bit. So when I took this O-ring off, it didn't spill gas out or diesel out on the floor. To remove these clips, okay, so these are the gas lines. To remove these I'll tell you really quickly, these are the little clips that hold from separating from the sending unit that's in here. But you need to buy a little tool that goes in. It goes inside here, and it pops these. I can't really focus or get enough light in there, but anyway, basically there's these little bearings in there that go over the nipple on the sending unit, and it plugs in and seals that way. So anyway, that's a little tricky. Some guys on YouTube talk about things you can make at home, but the little kit was $5 at Harbor Freight, so I'm not going to argue about that. It just was really easy that way. So anyway, I do have another seal, a ring seal, to put on here because I want to make sure that seal's really good. I don't want to be dripping gas or diesel when I'm filling up. So anyway, I'm going to put this together and do more on whether the little bit of work I did somehow makes this work now. Maybe the little float was caught on something. I don't know why it would be registering completely empty, but I'll tell you more in a minute. Okay, do-it-yourselfers, I learned something new. I put the sending unit back in the truck, and I wired it up, and I manually moved the float around, and I could see the gas gauge on the dashboard moving around. Then I inserted the float in the sending unit. This is the float into the gas tank, and before I bolted it all up, I'm looking at the dashboard and it's reading empty. So I pull it out and I move the float up and down, and the gauge is working. And then I'm realizing this float is not floating in diesel, but when I tested it over here with the water, it floated. So that's an easy answer. So I got this stuff for you to give you a little show. Diesel is less dense than water. This is water. That's the diesel. And a little test for you I'll poison this. See, the water just went right to the bottom. So it's more dense. The water's more dense. Diesel's less dense. Can you hear that? It's got a little bit of diesel in it. So it would float in water because it's more dense, but it won't float in the diesel because there's just enough in there that it sinks to the bottom. So I went online and they sell just the sending unit part. The part that holds this, that has a little rheostat that goes up and down. And they sell that part of that unit that goes in the gas tank. And it's on eBay for $12, $18. I'm sure I could go down to the Ford dealer and probably buy it for $50. They'll get it here in 2 days. But and I'm willing to buy that, but then I put on my magnifying headlamp here, and I even had to use the extra little bit on the front there, and I'm looking for the hole. I'm drying this off with a little bit of tissue paper, and then I'm shaking it and looking for where it gets wet, and it gets wet. I put a little mark there with my felt pen, and it's not even a hole. It is a little fissure. A little fissure has developed right in that groove, right up there. And you can't see it here, obviously. I'd have to get a whole routine to get to you to see that. Um, and so I don't want to wait 2 days with my truck. I mean, I got another truck I could drive right here, but I want to put this thing together. So I got my soldering kit out. I got my flux. I got my soldering iron. And I will be back in a minute to see if I can get a good seal on this. The first thing I'm going to do is drill out a little hole and get that diesel out. I'm going to drill out a little hole there, get the diesel out, and then I'm going to solder it up, and I'm going to soak it in diesel and see if it'll hold the diesel out or not. And I'll put it all together, and you know what? If it fails on me anytime soon, I mean, it made it, God, the truck is a 97, so what is that, 24 years it's made it? 97, it's 24 years, something like that. So, it made it 24 years. I think if I solder it up, it might even make it another 5 or 10, who knows what. So, see if I just don't want to wait 2 days for the part to get here, so I'm going to try to fix this. I'll be back with you. So, I don't have the ability, and I'm trying to make this video short. Too late now, I guess. But I drilled the hole, and now I'm going to shake out the diesel. There it is, coming out. Look at that. Alright, so I cleaned up the part. I shook out all the diesel. Actually, I squeezed it, kind of like you'd squeeze a beer can to get the drops to come out. Shaking it wasn't getting it out very fast. So I kind of squeezed it like a beer can, and all the diesel came out. I just cleaned it using a Q-tip and some muriatic acid that I have, and so you can see how it's cleaner. And the soldering iron's heating up. So the soldering iron is done, and a little bit of flux, a little bit of solder, and it just sealed right on up. And it's probably dry now. I'm going to float test it in a second. You can see the original solder marks when they put these two little end caps together, including a little solder point back here with a little hole, and I'm not sure. Anyway, that might have been done at the dealer, I don't know, or at the manufacturer, I don't know. Anyway, my part is soldered up. I'm going to test it. All right, so I've got it sitting down here. There's my solder weld, and I don't see any bubbles around it, so I'm going to go ahead and install that. Oh, look at Kitty wanted to say hi. What are you doing, honey? Oh, you're going to get into it with the diesel. Not okay. All right, so it's all installed in here. The new seal is inside there. These, you just push them on. That's how they go back on, but you have to use that tool I talked about earlier that goes underneath here and pushes them out. So that was a little tricky after 24 years of being there. This is all cleaned up. I've before I started taking this apart, I used hot soapy water and got all the grime out of there. Inside this ring, I still had to use a little toothbrush to clean it out and stuff to get it nice. So anyway, hopefully it'll all be good. I'm going to put my lid down and put a sheet metal screw in there. And then I'm going to seal up the edges with some kind of sealant. And it's supported, obviously, because this is part of the bed rail here. And so anyway, it'll be good. I'll show you the dashboard in a minute. Then the clips, one of them's bigger than the other, so this one looks smaller. So these little clips go on something like this. So I got them both on now, and they just hold, oh look at that, the cut. You always get cuts, can't avoid them. So anyway, the clips are on, it helps support them into position. And now time to put the lid down and screw. So there's the hatch bolted down. Like I said, I'll put a sealer around there. I know some of you with your $50,000 truck or more, or maybe less. Anyway, some of you want your truck really pretty and don't want to do this. I'm not so worried about pretty as I am function. So here we are at the dashboard, and you can see it's almost a full tank minus the 5 gallons that I siphoned out so I could work on this. And it works. That job, my guess is if I paid for that job, would have ran me $500, maybe $700. And who knows if they would say that I need a whole new whatever and I wouldn't know otherwise because I didn't work on it, and I'd just go, okay, fine, and then I'm out of there for $1,500. Who knows? What I like about working on my own vehicles, I mean, other than I cut my finger or whatever, it's no big deal, is that I get a real sense of accomplishment out of it. You know, I mean, I can afford the $500. I mean, I think that's actually a fair price for the amount of labor. I'm sure a shop would not cut out the bed. They'd drop the tank. And, you know, they do it the right way. I did it this way because, like I said, I want that trap door to get to that tank if I need to in the future. And but I just get a sense of accomplishment, and that's the best thing about being a do-it-yourselfer. All right, guys, thanks.